Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. We are here today to talk about the Roundtable and the build that we're currently designing and putting together, or I am, and the madness that's involved in a 1/35th 3-layer deck depiction in a diorama form of the Akagi, a Japanese carrier, at the moment of midway when it's struck by a bomb. And the reason for this is it's partly to do with the fact I like doing dioramas, partly to do with the fact that I chose this crazy kit and found out a few things about it, which you probably all aware of by now anyway, so I won't bore you with. But I am trying to depict the story of the historical event while also reflecting on my own health issues that I've had over the last year with heart operation, etc. So there's lots of things that will cross over within the storyline, or hopefully that's what we want to get across. So I'm going to bring in the guests in a minute. Malcom is here again. He's going to take charge of keeping me stum and asking the questions, so that's all good. I'll get them in just 2 seconds. And obviously, if you're watching, please make sure you pop in a comment and say hello. Any questions? Pop in a question. Make sure you put a question mark at the beginning or something to denote that it's a question so we can pick it up. And we will answer it no matter what part we are in. We'll always get to that part, get to the questions. Or maybe in the conversation we're having, you're thinking, oh, I've got this idea. I'd like to put this into the conversation. By all means, do that as well, because that'll help us discuss what we're about to discuss. So without further ado, let me get our host in. I am going to recap very quickly in a minute after I've got everyone in about what the diorama is all about, just in case. And Malcom is there. Hello, Malcom.
Hello. Hi. Good afternoon. Right? Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending where you are watching from and at what time you are rewatching this. Hello. How are you?
I'm all good, mate. Thank you. Not too hot in the shed, I hope. Because it's hot in the UK today, in the 30s.
Yep.
If I just bring in someone else who's looking very cool and calm.
Obviously. Oh, I thought you were bringing Billy.
John Mayfield, of course. All right, John, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Long time no see.
Indeed. And lastly, of course, is Bill.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
How you doing, Bill? Yeah, no, it's great to have you here. Really is. So these are the experts that we've got for this particular roundtable. I'm not going to lie, and it's not to be disrespectful to anyone that's here, but there are a couple of people in which I invited which couldn't make it, unfortunately. But with myself and the 3 guests that are now in shot, as well as we're all here to discuss, and Malcolm's going to talk us all through it, so that's all good. But that's the nature of the business, unfortunately. There are lots of people I find who are amazing modelers, very talented, and trying to get them to get a day that I can sit and talk to them about it is problematic, so bear with us. What I will be doing after this show is I will be putting out a calendar of exactly all the other 7 episodes, and the dates on there will be set solid. So that way you're not being mucked about, because I've had to move things around a couple of times for my own sake, not for anyone else's. And that's to do with my brain not being able to cope. But I need to put it in concrete to force myself to do it. So that's what I'm going to do after today's show, so you can keep a track on that. So, as I said, I'm just going to very quickly explain the diorama, because Jim is in. Hi, Jim, by the way. He's saying greetings. He's got a question already, which is great, which Malcolm can deal with it in a minute. What we're going to do is I'm just going to explain very, very quickly what the diorama is. So basically, it's a 1/35th piece. And this is an AI-generated image, which hopefully is not what's coming up on my screen. Hang on. There we go. So this is the at test stage. Get in there. Come on.
There you go.
Thank you. This is an image that was generated by AI, but it gives you a rough idea of what we're trying to achieve. So we've got the border models, 1/35th, Akagi flight deck, which would be the island you can see there with the flight deck. And then some bright spark decided he's going to do 2 layers below that, which would be the hangar decks, number 1 hangar deck and number 2 hangar deck. And at the particular moment in time in which we're depicting, it is the moment the bomb goes through the top deck and explodes in the first hangar deck. Literally that moment. But that gives you a rough idea of what we're going to do. So, without further ado, I shall hand the proceedings over to Malcolm and he can stop me talking.
So what we're going to do, we've talked about lots of different subjects relating to this. And this one being the 3rd episode is with plating the bulkheads, which is putting all the little details on. So we're going to talk about details, aren't we? Interior and exterior and all the little bits and things that make a big difference. Now, I know that the 2 gentlemen below me are quite busy making details and things like that inside dioramas, especially John that I've seen recently with his 3D printed catches and hatches and hinges at ant scale. Yes. So small that an ant could operate them. And it's those little things, the little details that we're all about really in the hobby, isn't it? It's all the little tiny bits. And what that story, what that creates, what story that can create, those details. So I've got a big list of questions. Did you say there was a question in the chat?
Yep,
yes, there is. Would you like me to kick that one off?
Yeah, can do. Why not?
Once finished, where will you display this diorama of considerable dimensions? Yes, very good question, Jim.
Yes, and probably now's not the time for me to answer that because I'm not quite sure myself. As I've said previously, hopefully what I'm going to do is we're going to achieve this diorama in 3 different layers in which can be taken apart, which means I can store it if I need to. I have an area over there in the corner where it could live if wanted to, but I'd rather not. So I'm going to build some cases because I do plan on taking it to a couple of shows. And that's all I've planned so far. One would be Telford in the UK, and the other one I hope would be to get it across the channel into a European show of some description, maybe. But that's all maybe. That's just like a bucket list, if you like. So the answer to your question is don't know quite yet because it is going to be over 1 meter tall to start with, and around about let's say 0.5 meter square in area. So it is quite a large
big heavy beast. Where will you, so once finished, where will you finally display it? Once you've finished displaying it, where is it gonna live?
Now that's a really good question. I haven't thought about that yet.
Okay.
The only thing I thought was I might auction it. Someone might want it. It was posed to me as a possibility that it could become a coffee table, but I think it's too high. So I don't know. I don't know yet. We'll see. It might even be just taken apart and retired after it's had its 2 shows.
John,
you could donate it to Model for Heroes HQ.
Yes, I had thought about that, but I am aware of HQ's thoughts on having such a big model, which might create issues for them. But I'll be honest, I'm probably leaning more towards the auction, and any funds raised from it will go to Models for Heroes, which I think would be a much more practical way of doing things. Because once I've done it, and there will be elements which I'll come to at some point, which are smaller that I might keep as keepsakes. We'll see.
Okay. So with all the details and things, you've got a lot of details to put on this because you've got 3 levels. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And each level is going to be detailed to the same degree. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically the idea being is that the 3 levels have a story that is told throughout the 3 levels, depicting different parts, different scenes, experiences, emotions, etc.
Yeah. So I was really going to ask, first off, I'm going to ask Bill, the differences between an external and an internal details, right?
Yeah,
How
definitely.
do you approach it differently? So I know that if you're building a tank and you're detailing the outside, would you approach the interior of those details? And I know that you do a lot of interior, and most of your thing is interior. Is there a difference between how you approach the interior and exterior detail in model making?
Lighting is the biggest issue. When it's external, you're dealing with your external light. You're dealing with possibly at a show having a different light, in your home having a different light on a sunny day, whatever. So you're just having to deal with atmosphere there. But in the lower decks, in something inside, you're able to control that light quite effectively. Even though the sides are open and stuff, you can really control that lighting. So that would be my biggest consideration. Um, Trying to look at your lighting early on and see how it affects things, because lighting will affect your paint, it'll affect your tones, it'll affect the contrast depending on the light, color, and temp. So I think that lighting probably has to play a role earlier than some people may think in their diorama.
Okay. And I guess you're going to have to control shadow as well, like you said.
Certainly, because half of all your lighting effect is shadow. So you're looking at the casting of shadows. You're looking at where it's affecting what's being lit. But, the trick that I use is I have a little light probe, and it's just a light on the end of a stick. One of the lights that I'm going to be using. And sometimes I'll have different temperatures to test it, and it's on a 9-volt battery. And so I'll get the diorama together in basic form. I haven't really placed things in it yet, but I can have the shadows, I can have the effect of the room. And then I'll place that probe in there and find exactly where I want the light. I also, placing a light in there without a fixture just gives you light. It's like atmosphere again. It's just out there. But directing it with a lamp shade allows you to direct the lights in there. And I think in a situation like this, trying to see spots of light where it's a very directed light almost coming down or moved, because of the blast. So instead of hanging down, it's maybe shifted or something like that. That's going to be one of the things that I'm going to be really excited to see as you start placing figures inside, the different areas, how you work with that light.
Yeah. So I guess it's in a theatrical sense. If you've done any theatre, lighting the stage is really, really important, and how you light really, it.
I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
So go for it.
Yeah, that's really where it comes from. I absolutely love watching the special features on DVD sets and the like. One of my favorites is all the Lord of the Rings, the box sets, the large box sets, like 4 and 5 hours. Well, those have 2 discs each for each movie. And so there are 6 discs with I don't know how many hours of content, but it is about lighting. It is about trying to present the idea. They talk so much about how things are set up in the scene that they're shooting. I think it teaches you a whole heck of a lot about constructing a scene, constructing a story, and then allowing all the elements that you put in there to tell the story on first glance. So, I think that's a great resource for anyone.
Yeah, there's a language of lighting, isn't there? Strong, long shadows and things like that. It tells a story. I don't know if you've seen the film 1914.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, James, you seen that one?
Yeah.
When they're firing up the flares to find one of the soldiers, and the shadows are running across the ruins along with him. And it's really stark and Really quite powerful. So lighting has a big role to play. Thank you, Bill. John, have you done any lighting? You don't really put lights in your
Not really, no.
interiors?
Most of mine, if I've got a crew figure in, there's nothing underneath it. I've done maybe one with internals. And that's fluid anyway, so there's no light in that one. But I was thinking on James's bits and pieces. He's got three different layers of lighting going on. The lower deck is going to be quite dim, even though it's going to be open. It's going to be quite dim. The middle one is going to be the blast, so there's lots of light in one side. The top deck is open, and I was just thinking while Bill was talking. I know it seems strange that I'm thinking that both the bottom deck, the bottom hanger, is open but all the way round, but there's a centre bit. So if you have and I know James is going to paint all his lights effects, so there's no physical light. But you might have a light in the middle that can open up that central part. So you've got natural light on the outside, but then the centre bit is from a light from the ceiling. So
I think you were going to put lighting in, weren't you, James? Like cursory lights. Like
yeah. So I wanted to nod to the electrical side of it. So that the lower deck, which isn't being affected by the blast at that moment, will have lights hanging from the ceilings and a subtle lighting throughout, mainly so you can pick out the bits and pieces that are going on within that area, but also to give a definition difference between the deck above, because the deck above will, as Bill alluded to in our previous conversations, we talked about having because on an aircraft carrier you've got lights with lamps around them, so that those are going to be hanging from the ceiling, but because of the blast wave they're going to be at an angle which will give me the opportunity in some of those to have an LED in there that gives a pool of light somewhere, hopefully to an element within that level. So yeah, there will be some electricity, definitely. There has to be, because by taking away the physical blast light and painting it, I can envisage that being quite stark, or it needs to be quite stark for it to be jumping out at you. So that allows me, that bottom layer, to have the lighting subtle. I'm not sure how much paint effects I'm going to need to make within there to sort of bring stuff out. Probably a little bit, but at the back, probably, and probably less the more you come forward, because it'll have the daylight of wherever you are in the venue. Yeah. So yeah.
One of the things I was thinking, just as you were talking about there, was having if you have all the lights that are hanging down, I assume they're like hanging down like low dining room lights. I don't know what they're called. If they are on a wire that's strong enough that you can then angle poise them, you have complete control about where those lights are going to be. They all don't have to be all facing one way, do they? You could adjust them on the fly if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And someone could change them every now and again to annoy you.
Well, that series, if you've got a good series of lights, you could give them, that's the blast wave. So the one closest there is a sharp angle, and they sort of vary angle as they go along. And the first ones could have a shattering bulbs.
Thanks for that.
Challenge accepted.
You're right. You are right. But in my mind of when we were talking about it, certainly when we talked about this, I talked with Bill. My initial thought process was where the nearest the blast won't have any LEDs, and then as you go through that part, the LEDs will be more, or maybe stronger, or just more quantity as you go along. But certainly the idea of having the ability to focus your dangly light onto a figure at the back of the thing to bring out that expression of what's going on within that moment is really, really important. Reflecting to the lower deck, how I achieve that without moving, blasting lamps and all that sort of stuff, that's going to be quite a challenge, I think. But yeah, there is, we will talk about shattering bulbs and stuff, because I have got something I want to share later.
Okay. Well, on this show or another.
No. It'll be in this.
Okay.
I'm just gonna, before you jump in with another question, I just want to answer. Jim's asked another question there, and he's saying how many aircraft will be included. This is a really, really good point. At the moment, the plan is to have one aircraft on each deck. Purely because of space, etc. I don't think there'll be a room for anything more than that. But there may be an opportunity for me to have half another aircraft or something somewhere. But I haven't planned that far ahead with the physical stuff. I have 2 aircraft. I have a Zero and I have a Kate up on the shelf, ready to be built. And the idea being is the Zero will be within the blast area, and it will be under maintenance because it's come down. It's no longer able to fly above the group of ships, and it's quickly got to be repaired and sent back up or pushed out of the way. So that I'm going to do that. That gives me the opportunity to fiddle around with engine detail and all that sort of excitement. But also the reason for that, it gives me that opportunity to create, I hope, some quite vivid reflections, because obviously if you've got the engine open, you've got lots of different types of material there that will reflect in different ways the blast colors.
Yeah, brilliant. So 4 was the answer.
No, 2 with a possible bit something. I'm really not sure. I don't think I'm going to have the space, and I'm most certainly not going to make it a meter wide to put another one in. So
no, true. Okay. Yeah.
We just got to be. I think what we've got to do is just got to be clever with, because if there is let's say a half of a plane, that gives me another half in which I can put into bits for one part, and the other bit can just be a half. But that would give me the ability to totally detail the interior of the cockpit, etc., and have that open on one side in the lower deck, so you can actually take the pleasure of seeing what that kit delivers. Who knows? Gotcha. I don't know. We haven't got that far.
Okay. So we're talking about lighting. It's all very well just saying, point your light there, point your light here. All very good, very easy. However, getting that lighting into a diorama is usually quite. You have to think about where the wiring's going to go. You have to think about where the battery's going to live. You have to think about what power battery, etc., etc. But I know, Bill, you put lights into yours. Have you got a technique where you will know how to build the diorama around the lights, or is it something that you kind of build the diorama and then you'd start drilling holes and things like that? How do you approach lighting and hiding the lighting wires?
Great question, because I think that hits a lot of people. They say, well, I want to put lights in, but I just don't know what to do. I've done this work and I don't want to destroy something that I've already done. And that really comes into play. And I've done both. I have built it with a good plan and everything is in place and things like that. But I think moreover, it's building with the plan that you're leaving yourself spaces to put it in. And there are natural things that you can use. I think the hiding of wires for James is going to be easy because they're very conspicuous. They just need to be put in there. You're dealing with a real element. So you can have electrical traceways, you can have tubing and conduit. I don't really see an issue. And I think that those, looking at parts of the model that you've shown us, the underside of the deck and things like that, the ceiling, there's nothing there. So you're open to put in a very nice detail of conduit running to these lights, power boxes, and all of that. But that's just half of it. That's the visible source. Hiding it behind the scenes where it's routed maybe to a connector to connect it from one level to the next, James talked about that before, how he's got the idea of how to do that connection. But that's really the key that I find, because any diorama that I build these days, I want to have access to the light as well as the wiring to be able to replace it if for any reason they should go out. And that's my own thing, because I purchased some resistors. I do my own lighting design. And so I purchased some resistors online, and apparently they were cheap. And so, though they were the right resistor for the application, over time the lights have dimmed. Meaning that, there's some heat buildup, the resistor's starting to choke it off, and
Yeah.
So those may need to be replaced. So that's my best advice for doing it. Number one, hiding it in your situation is going to be adding detail. You're going to add a nice electrical detail to that maybe wasn't there. You may have an electrical box on the side of the the back wall that becomes the mast and all that. That might be just a wonderful detail that's functional. And then behind the scenes, access, routing, labeling. Please label your lighting. If you're not labeling your lighting, you're going to do what I've done and step back into it 3 months later and go, oh, what's that? If you should use colored lighting that uses different resistors, or even if you're purchasing your lighting third part or from a manufacturer, and you're getting it delivered, so it's already designed, resistors in, you just have to plug in power. That's wonderful. Still label it. I think it's a really good idea. There are many times where I've drawn a few electrical traces together into a bundle, to pass through an area to an access area where I can work on it. And then I'm just faced with a bunch of bundles, and I'm sitting there, testing with my voltmeter to try to figure out which is which. So label your stuff. But I think you're going to have fun. And I try to do that as much as I can. I try to work the detail into what I'm doing as practically as possible, especially in that situation. I did that with a Machine and Krieger diorama a number of years ago. And so all of the wiring, all of the harnessing, all of the electrical traceways you see throughout it, about 10% of them are live. And then the rest is just built up. So that would be my best advice is look at where you're putting it, and how that can enhance the scene where it's visible, and then label it and think about, a centralized area where all that electrical is going to come back and how you can work on it later.
Good idea. Yeah. I'd be worried that if you have the wiring obvious and you have a circuit board that you'll be using your tweezers to change the switches around and things like that.
And I haven't gone that way when it's an Arduino, because I've done Arduinos as well. Those I'll typically mount on a little PCB that I build up, and that'll be mounted, and then everything will be connected, and I'll have 2-point connectors, even to the point of utilizing the connectors so they're always the same. Always male, always female, this side, that side. And you get into that, and it becomes very enjoyable. I know folks that have complained about, or it's a bother or something like that. It's just another skill that we can learn in our craft is how I see it. And it enhances what we do. And it is quite fun to figure out lighting and understand it a little bit better, so that it can, enhance what you're trying to do, because you draw the eye with light. The OSL is going to do it, certainly, because that is something that people say, oh, look at that, and it's a really neat thing. But light will absolutely draw your eye from 12 feet away from your diorama as they're walking around the hall, and so I think lighting is such a key element to any kind of under space or any available space that you can light, it's a magnet. So it's always something good to get that initial engagement, and then you can thrill them with your skills after that.
There you go. Thrill the skills.
Yeah, I think that another thing in which I need to think about is certainly with the hangar deck with the OSL, the object source lighting, is to not fall for something I was considering and thinking, oh well, if I do the OSL and then the light's separate, I got to include that thought process all in one go. The reason being, there is every opportunity to highlight especially at the back, the OSL with a light. Mm-hmm. So that then makes it just that little bit more pungent, a little bit more jumpy out at you, So it's going to be an interesting journey, and like I said right at the beginning, one of the reasons why I wanted to go down the OSL route was because I've done some lighting before on a diorama, and in this environment where I am, brilliant, absolutely amazing. I know I'm being modest, but it looked great. Took it to a show, put it into a big hall, lost everything, literally lost everything, and I'm not overly emotional about those sort of things because it's okay, lesson learned. But the same degree, it's like, it's just now I'm annoyed that I bought it because I didn't think of that. Why didn't I think of that? How do I get round that? That's another thing as well that I've got to process in the thought process. So OSL hopefully will take some of that away, but it won't take it all away because the lower deck's not going to have that per se. However, I have considered again, thinking about the OSL element of things, I may be able to repeat that in the lower deck, but with subtle colors, enhancing the lights that are there. So again, thinking ahead, if my lights don't work great, the OSL will hold it, whereas it'll be completely lost if I don't do that. So that's another challenge, another level that I've got to think about, because obviously I can get a model and I can highlight a figure and go, right, all those edges now in white, I've got to paint in orange because that's the flat blast. It's a completely different skill level to enhance a model with a very soft glow. Don't know how that's going to work. I really haven't. So,
and the temperature of light. I'm sorry to interject, but the temperature of light as something that has to be a primary concern as well. If you're using a blue light, blue becomes white, and by blue I don't mean blue. What I mean is some of the higher temperature lights, like 5600 and things like that. Those more daylight temperatures are going to suck the color out of your paint and very much alter it. Now, in some cases you want that, but in most cases you don't. So a warm light affects yellows and oranges. So that's going to be something you have to play with. That's why this probe idea is a really useful one during the painting process, during the building process. It's just on a end of a skewer, a kebab skewer, piece of bamboo, and I just put it on the end, and then I can just simply go in there even while I'm painting, because even though you're going to get into a hall and there's going to be a lot more light than home mostly, you are much more in control of those shadowed areas than you might believe. Those shadowed areas, the bigger contrast, because of the brighter light, they're going to be darker. So, just than in your regular environment. So really work with your light. And I think not enough people look at that when they're doing something inside or when they're trying to, build something that's real cozy or real tight or real compact or something like that. Physical light inside that can just open that area up instead of I'm peering into something that's dark. It really, really helps.
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't take a lot of light. And
No.
it doesn't necessarily take an obvious light. FX lighting is something that I use quite a bit, where it's a nondescript light. The light source isn't necessarily known. It's like you're going through a ride at Disneyland or something like that. Well, it's just lit. We don't know where the light's coming from. That's quite effective, and that can be very helpful. You don't always have to define your light, but you also don't want to make it look like, well, where's that light coming from? You don't want to make people ask those questions that can't be answered by the diorama.
Yeah, because you don't want people to ask questions that distract from the point of the story, right? So, yeah. John, did you have something to...
Yeah, I'm slightly tangential. Now, working on engines and that, even in daylight, you can have dark spots. So people use torches.
Yeah.
I don't know if you thought about it, and some of the mechanics are going to be having torches. So you can use that to pinpoint specifics.
On an engine bay or something would be brilliant.
Engine open, you've got a bloke there with a torch. He's going to get blasted, but he's still there, or the torch is there. So there's a light source coming out. Obviously, it's difficult to route all the cables and that, but even in the lower decks, it's going to be dark. Yes, there's going to be light, but there's not enough light to see what they're doing. So there's going to be blokes there with lots of hand torches.
Yeah.
I'm just going to... I'm just going to highlight some of the comments that have been made in the chat, because otherwise I'll get behind with them. So Dave Scully saying, I suppose you need to consider how the story will be told by painting it, i.e. long shadows, muted, bright painted colours to reflect the explosion, or by the use of coloured and placed LEDs.
Yep.
Joe, Fighting Man Joe, is saying, going off an earlier build, you could have a portable lamp. Now, it's one of the reasons why I thought I'd bring it in right now, because this is sort of talking about what John's just said there. Obviously, working in on aircraft, you'd have a portable lamp. And you could have a portable lamp near where you have a partially open aircraft, etc. This could be more viewer interest. Yeah, and this is something in which I thought about very, very shortly and just went, yeah, no. And then a question from Jim. He says, was the hangar deck on the Akagi or whatever the carrier is you're modelling illuminated strictly by overhead lights? And then lastly, Crazy's there. Hi, Crazy. Haven't seen you for a while. Nice to see you. Great point about light temperature. How many times over the years have we heard about light in judging rooms having making a difference? Absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
So very quickly going back to Jim's question. Yes. Well, yes and no. So yes, it would have been mainly from overhead lighting. On the bulkhead walls, there would be some lighting of some description there as well, but the majority of it would have been overhead as such. But that is speculative because I have no diagrams to back or pictures to back that up. So it's really the way in which we interpret it.
Yeah, it would have been lit quite poorly, I imagine, inside.
Yeah. It would have, but one of the things harping back to something that Bill just said is one of the joys of having that bulkhead at the back of the diorama piece is that we could potentially, or I could potentially, put a strip of light along that wall, which then floods down the wall, which allows for that element of light, which you could then control with, like, let's say, a strip of LEDs, and you can control with a filter in front of it to reduce the amount of pungent light you're getting, and you could even to a point break that in sections so it becomes more looking like it's a lamp along a walkway, sort of, potentially. So it's definitely something in which to consider.
And Joe says take into account dedicated lights for workbench and doors, etc. So there'll be lights all over the place, held by people and set up, like John says, the torches, and then there'll be lamps that probably guys put next to the work area so they can see. I don't know what they would have done in those days, but kind of can bring us on to my next point if I can. Is that realism versus. So the details of what actually happened and the stories you're going to tell versus actual accuracy in terms of the lighting. You know, what should you be heading towards? Is there a balance, or is there like you should be doing purely realism? What do you think, John? Which way would you go?
My thought was maybe slightly out of what James is doing, is would you have something that's going to be maintained on the upper hangar deck, or would you throw it lower down? And all the stuff that needs to be done quickly on the upper deck, so all the rearming, bombing, all that sort of stuff, and refueling higher up so they can just get them straight back out again. Where the lower stuff, the lower deck, so the further down, is then the maintenance, as in stripping out, redoing engines and things like that. So that's what I was just thinking of. So that could be more lit with those sort of lights, and you've got your engine bay in there. But the upper deck it's just being bombed up, and fueled up, and then the blast is just taking it, so you can see the underneath or whatever. Mm-hmm. You got the detail and so you've got all the separate lighting, the bottom lighting, LEDs all over the place, and you got more specific. Whereas the OSL lighting is so you've got light to dark because the blast is taking it.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about lighting and the blast, etc., I just want to throw a couple of images up just to help people who may be trying to envisage. If we talk about that that first hangar deck, so again, these are all generated by AI, but that gives you a rough idea of a blast wave. Now, that is what I'm trying to model or recreate within the piece, is the blast, the moment of the blast. So you can tell by that the radius of where the blast is and how that projects itself across the hangar deck. Again, this image is a similar sort of thing, but it's explaining about the fact that the explosion, although there would be an initial explosion, certainly in this occasion, as you go away from the fire and the blast, it then creates that secondary explosions, fires and cook-offs and all that sort of stuff. So using that theory, this is really, really important that I get this part across in the story, because obviously, as you can see, the blast element is actually off the diorama. It is not on the diorama. The where the diorama is and where it finishes on the left-hand side is where the lift shaft would be, which runs through the whole ship. It was one lift, and it went obviously from the bottom up, and etc., etc. Now, I don't know where that lift was in the story per se. I've not found out that information, but it could be anywhere. It wasn't at the top, that much I do know. So it could be on either of the other decks. But the idea being is that gives me the ability to allows me to create a figure which is going to be the focal point of the blast, effectively. Now, I do have, this is the figure, I do have this figure here, which you can see.
Oh, nice.
So
that looks good.
This is a 1/35 figure from ICM. It isn't a Navy figure, it's an Army figure, and he's been shot, basically. But I've made this figure up because I want to experiment with something to see how I'm going to do that OSL effect. So I thought, I'll make the figure as it is in the box. That way I'm not manipulating anything. I've got his helmet falling off, etc., etc. It gives me the ability to start to understand that process. But obviously, as we go through the hangar deck, the lighting and paintwork will be all down to the strength of that blast wave. So understanding the speed of sound, speed of the wind, the light, and all that sort of stuff. It's a bit of a headache, but yeah, that's something which I've got to take into account when I'm factoring that all in. So I hope those help to understand quite what I'm trying to create.
there's a lot of angles, isn't there? There's a lot of things that you need to be able to get across in this.
So going back to your original question, which was how is that story going to be told within that layer? The idea being is we've got 3 layers in which I want a continuity of story in each layer told by different elements. So, for example, on the top level, there's going to be the confusion, the suddenness of this emotional and traumatic event. People not knowing anything about it because they're looking in a different way, because it's that bang moment, literally that moment. So there will be people that will be completely oblivious. So I want to reflect all of those different elements on the top. In the hanger deck, I want to, obviously you've got the shock wave. So the shock wave is really, really important, because obviously remember, this is, although we're depicting a moment in history, it's also in line with the fact I had a heart attack, I had to go through a triple bypass, etc., etc. So it's all those emotions have got to be explained. So there's going to be the shock, there's going to be the bewilderment, the run to action, the fear, all those sort of bits and pieces, and they'll be picked out by certain bits within the piece. So maybe 4 or 5 elements within that one layer, and then the lower layer will be the carrying on as normal, recovery, and all those sorts of elements will be within that layer, so that hopefully overall they'll all marry up to the one story, the historical moment, but the elements have personal meaning. That's what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah. So I guess what I was saying about lighting and realism, I guess you're not going for realism because you're adding in that extra element, aren't you, as well? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going for a historical, factual, correct moment in time, because I don't have that information as such.
Yeah.
But I'm using it to tell the story.
Yeah. That's cool. Like it.
I've got a real quick one on that. Hopefully, I talk a lot, but question: I mean, I like them, but how many of us watch more documentaries than movies? And think of it in those terms. So when I'm building a diorama, I'm thinking in terms of a movie. I want to tell you a story. So and I'll use everything in my ability to go ahead and enhance that story and make that story real, like a writer in a movie would, or a director would, or a producer. So they're trying to get a message across, whatever that message is, based on historical fact. So I think if you go too historical, then it can, yes, the impact of that moment is there. But I think by telling a story like you're doing, like you just explained, James, you're taking people on a journey through that diorama. So I would absolutely, well, my own personal opinion is I would absolutely stick with story, think of it more of a fantasy element than a factual element. The fact has to be there to ground it, certainly. But the human element and the story that you're telling has to come through more than that, and the details are only supporting your story. That's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I guess that's the same with film and theatre as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Right. They're trying to get a message across, not just report.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That's the thing with it is it's not a documentary. It's a good way of phrasing it, really. It is all about the journey, and what I hoped. I mean, the only downside by doing these roundtables and making it so public is that I'm sort of giving away some elements already. And one thing I really want to try and achieve is if someone does physically see it, whether it be a picture or in person, I want someone to go, oh, yeah, I get that. But I also want them to walk away and go, oh, hang on a minute. Oh, hang on. I want that story to continually play on them for a period of time, whether it be a moment or when they're driving home, they're thinking about what they did that day, and they're like, oh wow, I didn't even see that. Or someone in a conversation says, oh, did you see that build? Did you notice this bit? It's not an Easter egg as such, but it is. That's what I would like to achieve with the build. I want people to stand and appreciate the story, the journey. It's it'd be lovely if someone says, "Oh, it's a very nice model," but that's not really the aim of it. It's to make people stop and think. And if they can relate that, by doing this so openly, if I can relate that to heart health, your mental health, all those sort of other bits and pieces, and people see it and go, I see what he's trying to say there, and I need to go and get my ticker checked. That's a bonus. It's a real bonus.
Yeah. Sponsored by the Heart Foundation. British Heart Foundation.
Maybe that might be where it ends up.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
There's a couple
Crazy
of comments.
Got a comment in there as well about it says, take the third picture you showed, think in vertical lines 3 or 4 as zones of light or shades as the different health and healing in terms of color gradients and emotional reactions, and each color zone, say blue towards orange, shock to anger reactions to the current. It's similar feeling based through the color transition also.
Wow.
They're using colors to tell a story. It's quite nice.
Wow. Yeah, crazy. That totally makes sense. And that is not something in which I'd taken on board at all. So that is amazing. Thank you very much for sharing that. And that's the whole point of these roundtables is, you know, I don't know if Bill feels the same, but every time we sit and talk about this thing, different things pop into my head and leads me down different other roads where I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I could do that. That'd be good. But that's amazing. I hadn't thought of that at all. Okay. Different colors and emotions. Let's get
your color wheel out now.
Yeah. Oh, it made it so much more complicated.
We did not make anything complicated.
No. Go on, John.
No, I'm just thinking on that there where you've got the blast, so it's going to be brilliantly white. There's your through, and your orange is your what the bloody hell, and red is anger and bewilderment and all that, going towards a blue in the distance, where it's just your calmness and your mental well-being. That's why, because obviously the blast, it's bright and it's painful. It soothes it out.
Yeah, that's going to be the really interesting thing, and something I was thinking about today while I was preparing for this was that I've obviously thought about all this blast scenario within that second layer, but actually, wouldn't there be an element of that on the first layer as well?
Sorry, thinking on that, that's your brain. That's your brain going all the time. Whereas the lower level is the underlying calmness, because they don't know anything about what's going on, but they're just busy doing what they're doing. So that's the rest of you. I'm doing this one. I'm just going to carry on what I'm doing because I don't know different. Yeah,
and that's exactly what I'm trying to depict, John. You know, that's exactly the thing. Is not to get too hooked up on one layer. And I think I was thinking about it today and thinking, what I really need to do actually is I need to make a storyboard. As crazy as that sounds, but I need to make a storyboard where I have a storyboard for the top deck, a storyboard for the bottom deck, and the middle deck, and all that sort of stuff. Because then that allows me. Because one of the questions that was asked very early on is, how many figures are you going to have? No idea. As few as possible, hopefully. But by having a storyboard, that allows me to get those elements of compassion, of fear, etc., because that's what they're going to be. There's going to be those moments. There's going to be a spanner flying through the air, a toolbox flying through the air, a light exploding. Now, God, thank you very much for that. You know, all those sorts of things.
And a torch falling out of someone's hand.
Yeah, spinning round.
Yeah, lots of things. So those little small details is what brings it to life. Is what we said at the top of the show, wasn't it? Little details, the little bits and pieces that makes the difference. But I was going to ask, how do you really sell the realism of it? I know that we said we weren't really going to go with realism, but it has to at least look real in the way that it's got to be shocking, right? It's got to be traumatic, so it has to look really traumatic. What sort of details do you think you could use in there that will sell that? You know, what will really bring the interior to life, other than what we've already discussed, and that's light. You got any ideas, Phil?
Sorry, for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just go with the hyper details. I think it's a lot easier, at least for me, to paint details than figures. And so to have the full bay, to have the tools, to have the boxes, to have the spare engines, to have all of the extra flotsam there, it can still interact with the blast wave, but it doesn't have to be a figure. People are going to naturally look at the figures, but with having all that other stuff in there, and a lot of it, I wouldn't go sparse personally, but a lot of it, you know, that mayhem of war, that I think is going to help establish the realism. I always think about, you know, building the scene, and then you put your details in it, and that establishes where and you know, the time of day, and it establishes all that, and it's just in the blink of an eye. But it's really your figures that tell the story. Everything else is supporting. So I think to increase the detail to tell the story, the figures will tell the story, but put as much, I mean, electrical, you know, the power ups for the aircraft, you know, spare tires, equipment for changing out tires. I mean, any sort of equipment that can go down there, I think that's going to really help. And like I said, you know, it's going to react to the blast just like the figures will, just like the toolbox you talk about and the stuff flying back. It gives you more opportunity to go ahead and physically demonstrate the blast just by having more stuff in there. And it is going to be hectic. I mean, they were going back and forth and swapping bombs for bullets and torpedoes and all kinds of stuff. So they were in a very, very hectic environment. So show hectic in the environment. That would be the direction I'd go.
Yeah, especially if it.
Yeah, stack of boxes. Yeah. It will go from a stack of boxes to a stack of boxes.
Yeah.
But closer to the blast, it's more acute. Where further away, it's darker.
Yeah, the box could be coming apart.
Yeah. So
sorry,
top one's going. No. Top one's going further because it's more. Is it lighter? Yeah, light's going through the air. So you say spanners, toolboxes being blown over. Yeah, lights being bodies. I mean, bodies. Yeah, you might have part of it if you really want to put it that way. But it's an explosion. What happens in an explosion? It's the worst case scenario for you. Yeah, it's not going to be nice. Are you going to put that in? That's something for you to decide.
Yeah, I've decided on that. I'll be keeping away from gore because I don't want that to overpower the scene. But
a lot of the figures, if you have them, even if you're facing the blast, especially if they're close in, they're going to be very bright face. You're not going to see eyes or anything like that. If they're turned away, the back's going to be bright, but the face is going to be dark. So you're going to lose a lot of the detail, or the pinpoint detail, like that. The center deck, the middle, the top, not the top deck, the first hangar deck, that's in chaos. I think a lot of the detail for that me personally thinking about it, is the movement.
Yeah.
From one side to the other, from light, very bright light, to very dark. Whereas the lower deck, it's chaotic in the case of it, they're busy. And that's where your detail is, your engine detail, the blokes working, your lights and things like that. So you get different elements. And the top deck, as you say, the command structure is what the hell's going on? How are we going to do all this? And there's panic as such.
Yeah.
It's different detail.
Yeah.
So,
James, I got one final question, James, written down here. But if do you want to read those two comments?
Yeah, can do. Crazy's just saying, nicely put, Bill. I assume that was your explanation, not the fact you'd give me yet another element to drop in there. Exploding boxes. I saw Malcolm write that down, so that's fine. Dave Kennedy says, how about you use the figures to tell your personal story, James? The different figure poses expressing your reaction to the heart attack, shock questioning, and the journey of recovery. Absolutely, it's a joy actually that everybody that is interacting with is getting exactly what I'm trying to express. So, which is unusual because normally I talk a load of old toffee. But yes, absolutely, the figures will. They will show elements of that. I'll come back to that in a second because there was something that was popping in my head as we were all talking, which I'll share with you. So the next thing's from Jim, and Jim says, no doubt the hangar decks on all 4 carriers was a mess with ordnance, personnel, tools, etc. Absolutely. At that critical moment, all of the attack aircraft were in the hangar bays, having their torpedoes the bombs swapped for the torpedoes and vice versa, because they couldn't make their mind up whether to attack the American fleet that they didn't know was there or go back to Midway. So yeah, absolutely. It is both layers are going to be very, very chaotic, and that gives me the opportunity with the flight deck not being not covered in aircraft and stuff like that to actually reflect the other side of that as well. But anyway, we'll get to that at some other point. Steve's jumped in, said good afternoon, all afternoon indeed. Nice to see you. And when we were talking about figures a minute ago, John was just saying about bright light and not being able to pick out eyeballs and all that sort of stuff. One of the things in which I had semi-decided on was that I wanted the face of that first figure, the one that's being hit by the blast, to be half in shadow, half not, because I'm hoping if I can visualize it properly and paint it properly, is I want that to show the immediate shock by that stark contrast of white, all but white light basically, and all the shadow that would give you. That should, I hope, create that illusion.
On that one, is he going to be initially, would he have been facing towards you, looking out? Would he be facing where the blast's coming from, or is he facing away from the blast?
So he'll be facing it.
Because if he's facing that way, he's blown away from the blast. So half his face, this side, or half his body is going to be light. And that's what I'm trying to get at. Are you lighting up his face? Are you lighting up the back of his head? Or half and half? So he's doing that.
If we go back to this figure, for example, I mean, the way this figure is it's going backwards. So yeah. If I pivot that very slightly and make the stance, so he's literally on his tiptoes of 1 foot being blasted backwards, but maybe blasted backwards and sideways at the same time, that allows me to have that diagonal contrast of light across him. So it's not just going to be the face. I mean, the face is important, I think, because I want to try and use that. If I can get the right head, it's just weird how my head works, but if I can get the right head, right pose, mouth open with shock, etc., the other thing that's going to be really, really difficult to model is that obviously the power of that blast is going to change his facial features. his clothing features, everything. So that's going to be really mind-blowing just to get my head around, which we're going to talk about in the next round. 3 experts are going to help me through that one who do figures and sculpted. Looking forward to that because I'm hoping they're going to have lots of answers. But that's sort of the visualization I've got in my mind of what I'd like to achieve. Then obviously, as you go further back into the hangar, they're all being affected in slightly different ways because we referred to that diagram I put up with the different blast elements. But obviously, clothing is still going to be something that's going to be affected in the second to third part, not so much in the fourth. And the fourth is going to be where that immediate rush to action sort of thing's going to be, because you do get that in those elements. You get people that will run, and you get people that will run towards and away. So that's where that will be. So yeah, it's. I think I answered the question, John. I'm not sure now.
Yeah, you did.
Well, it's interesting because my last question was very similar. So what I don't know what details are in there that relate, or you're going to put in that relates to the surgery itself or your health following or prior. What had you considered to add? I know that you said you felt about the emotional side, but did you think about using items from your time in hospital? You know, actually in the diorama and things like that, or not?
I can't put a bedpan in there. Although, actually, do you know I could? I could do it for an oil leak. Hadn't thought of that. That's quite an interesting. Yeah.
There you go.
Anyone that's got a 1/35th bedpan hanging around, I'll pop it in the post. That'd be lovely.
Well, I'm just wondering if you did have some of the, I don't know if you took anything home with you from the time you were there, because a lot of people would grab all sorts of bits and tubing and things like that to be able to use with their dioramas and things. So I just wondered if you had anything that was going to be in there.
Unfortunately, when I went into the surgery, I did take a bag with me, but they put me out, so I couldn't walk around and steal what I wanted to for the diorama.
But is there going to be what things have you thought about that's going to go in to do with the surgery then, apart from the shock of it? Is there anything particularly you're going to put in?
So this was part of the reason why I wanted the Zero to be being worked upon and the engine being open. Symbolically, the fact the engine and the heart is the connection. I that's something in which I'd reflected upon as a part of surgery. I'd also thought that I would quite like to make it look like the engine was being worked on while they were moving the aircraft, or thinking about or creating the illusion that they were going to move the aircraft, because it needed to get out the bloody way, because it wasn't going to get back up in the sky straight away. It needed a lot more work. So yes, I had thought of that, and that was why it was really important to me to have that Zero in that process. So that's sort of hinting towards the surgery. The lower decks, as John alluded to, really is about the fact that you get shocking news, and it's life changing, but life goes on. You just have to carry on doing what your day-to-day stuff you have to do. And I didn't want to try and cover the whole journey. It was more a case of the journey of the shock, the surgery, possibly a little bit more onwards from the journey. But by creating a piece that said there was a journey, the blast, remember, is not on the piece on purpose. So the heart attack is not really on the piece. The end of the journey is not on the piece. So this is just a snapshot of part of the journey. And that's why I wanted to ensure that there was a journey, that everyone understood that there's a journey, because then they would go, well, what happened next? What would be the next thing? That's where you start thinking about, shall I go and get my heart tested? Should I go and do an MOT? Should I be thinking about losing a bit of weight? Stop smoking? Because obviously who wants to blow up? Whatever. That was really important to me, to make sure that there was an element that allowed people to go away and finish the journey themselves.
Yes.
Whatever that means.
Yeah. So I guess we've got to look out for Easter eggs and things as well. I'm sure you'll be putting those in. Bill, do you put Easter eggs in? Not literally Easter eggs, but
yeah, because they're a bit big.
Hmm.
I try to. And the reason is, and I explain this quite a bit in my videos. When you engage someone, when you bring someone into your diorama and they start looking and they start interpreting what you're trying to say, I think it's important to, number one, not let that illusion fall. So you know, the smaller the detail, the better. But for that person that just wants to look at every angle and then what's behind there, and they're there for 20 minutes looking at the diorama, you want to give them a reward for that. You want to give them something that maybe 10% or even less of people are ever going to see in your diorama. The vast majority of people, I understand, are not going to see those things, and that's okay. It is a reward for those people that do find it. So absolutely. And I try to not make it like a rubber ducky or something like that. I try to make it just necessarily like a detail that a large portion of modelers would forget to put there. It's not important. It's not seen. I don't have to put stain on the bottom of the desk, right? I only have to put stain on the top of the desk because that's all anybody is ever going to see. So why stain the bottom of the desk? Well, I stain the bottom of the desk. And I want to make sure that there's something for those people to find when they're so engaged, because if they get to that point, you're communicating with that viewer. You are talking to them. You are telling them your story, whether you're there or not. And I just don't want that story to fall apart because that little Easter egg or that detail isn't there in the smallest and most recessed of sections. So that's just a philosophical way of building, really.
Yeah. Going through all the details. Got a question. So Jim says, if I recall, the attacks were a complete surprise to the Japanese. The SBDs literally came out of nowhere and struck before anyone on board knew what was happening. Yeah.
Yes.
So it would be...
Yeah, and in fact, with the Akagi, the particular one in which we're concentrating on, it wasn't actually meant to be attacked in that first wave. It was purely because that everybody went for one particular aircraft carrier that the wing or unit veered off and decided they'd go somewhere else to get more chance of getting a hit. So it was very much out of nowhere, and that's why it's another reason why they were so in chaos, was because they'd actually planned to go back to Midway and drop another wave of bombs, but then they suddenly realized that the carriers were close by because the spotter plane had found them, and they were deviating about what should they do. Should they attack the fleet, not or Midway? But obviously they had to attack the fleet, because if they didn't, they could be vulnerable themselves, etc., etc. So there was a lot of confusion on there.
Yep. And a question from Joe. Have you given a thought, James, to what will be the focus of the main character in the different sections? What details are you going to tell your main story? What details are you going to use to tell your main story and the blast, obviously, but after that?
Yes, is a short answer. I have thought about that, and I'm busy. I should have prepared myself for this. Funny enough, yes, and I was working on this only today, with the joy of my AI companion. So as it stands at the moment, there will be potentially 4 different scenes within each layer as a minimum. What I wanted to make sure was that we had certain moments covered, because obviously, as I've explained earlier, I wanted to make sure all the emotions were covered, but also elements of what happened to me. So, i.e., the shock of finding out because I had no idea what was going on. I went to hospital thinking I was going to waste hours of my life sitting in accident emergency and be told go home and stop being so stupid. So it was a shock. So you're going to have figures that are showing the shock. You're going to have an element that shows the instinctiveness of shielding themselves from what a shock from what's happening. You've got the domino effect, where people or elements are affected by the shockwave. Boxes being thrown all over the place and shattered, lighting and Bill's suggestion of torn boxes flying through the air and all that sort of stuff. They're all part of the chain effect of what's going on. So there will be obviously figures that depict some of that, but then there'll be objects that will translate that across the piece to allow it into each element. So you don't realize you're looking at lots of different elements. You're looking at one element. So yeah, that has been considered. As I said, I haven't mapped it out 100% yet. I am still very much working through elements and bits and pieces. I'm absolutely desperate to start modeling. But there are elements that I've decided I can't do. So for example, you don't know this, Bill, but I built this weekend. This
nice.
Is a 1/48 scale 0, and the reason being,
small.
It does look very small. Enough, you. And the reason being is I want to paint this so it looks like a lovely 0, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try the OSL effect on
nice
an airplane, because I've never done it before. I've got no idea how it's going to work. So better to do it with a smaller scale and see how it works. So then I can then translate that and learn the lessons as I go along, obviously. But one of the other elements in which that no one has said about, but one of the things in which I am considering seriously is that 0, although it's been taken apart to be worked upon, moved out of the way, etc., that will be affected by the shock waves.
Oh yeah.
So the landing gear might have given way. John's not here to say it, but I'll say it for him. The shattering of the window of the cockpit, for example, with a spanner going through it or something. So yeah, I'm finally getting to a point, because I got really frustrated about a month ago, going, I'm busy chatting and I'm not making anything. But that it's actually perfect, because I've done elements that I needed to understand how they might work and how they would go together. So structural stuff, I've done that. Lots to learn still on that. Now I'm looking at the individual pieces for the story element and how I can achieve that. And then while I'm doing that, I'm actually going to start on the top deck, which is the main model I've got, because I'm going to start detailing the island, etc. That gives me my modeling and my ability to think about what I'm doing while I'm doing something constructive. So, yeah.
Okay, so you'll be definitely storyboarding. I think is one of the things to definitely.
Yeah, it's a definite. I've got
and some color as well. Do some color storyboards too.
Yeah,
cool. Brilliant. Steve says, so have you worked out a way in which you're going to transport it to shows, etc.? I think we talked about that, didn't we? In one of the other.
I know
tables.
is the short answer. It's gonna be 3 boxes. How that translates into physical things, I don't know yet. It'll be a case of I will build something around it once I've built it. So
I would say that was a volunteer. That was him volunteering to help you.
Well, you say that, but actually I do have a volunteer that's with us today who has volunteered to do some strengthening work with beams and stuff. So maybe he might knock the boxes up. Oh, he seems to have left.
Oh, he's left.
But yeah, no, I to be honest, what I probably will do is I probably will give the dimensions to a carpenter and ask them to make them. Is the honest answer, because I'm not going to be able to buy it off the shelf. So, Crazy Loco says that. So yeah, the storyboards in combination with the mini experiences would be the next step. Absolutely. And then it's just thrown in the notes on those storyboards with the different thoughts as they come along. I didn't know the king was turning up for this. That was outrageous. But yeah, I mean yeah, definitely. I think that's what I'm going to have to do next. I think I have to create the storyboards, which is going to be really super fun because I've never done that before. And also the storyboards allows me to play with that color idea, which again I haven't thought about. So thanks again for that, guys. That's really, really great. But also gives me the ability that one of the sessions in which we will be talking about how you create the drama and visual effects with some people that do filming, actually physical filming. So that gives me a storyboard in which I can send to them for them to go away and come up with some ideas and stuff that we can discuss. So that would be amazing in itself.
Wow. So, almost like you planned it.
I wish I had have, but no.
Yeah, no, that's right. It'd be good if you had.
But this is the great thing, right, with doing these things. And this is the thing I hope people that watch get out of it is the process of building a model isn't always as simple as follow the instructions and glue bits together.
No, you are building the model right now by talking about it like this.
Absolutely.
You know? We as hobbyists, we can talk about the hobby as much as we can build. Well, I certainly can. So, James, I'm going to have to start to wrap it up because I'm getting very hot. And
yes, I think we're done. It's an hour and a half into it. I think we've covered everything we wanted to do. Those that are watching, if you have any thoughts, if you're watching live, or if you're watching not live, pop them in a comment. Let's start a conversation in the community that there is. You can catch up with me through Facebook and all the other mediums in which there will be. So, a massive thank you to you all for being here and being a part of this because it's really important. But
are you putting this on the James? Have you putting this on the Model Officers Mess? All these kind of ideas and photographs and things like that. Is that where it's all going to?
So yes, it will be. Actually, it'll be on the Model Officers Mess Facebook group, but it'll also be on the Model Officers Facebook page as well, and more than likely on the Discord group as well. But it'll be on everywhere basically.
Cool.
So I can tell you that the next roundtable will be bringing things to life, where we're going to talk about figures and stuff, and that is on the 24th of this month. Again, Sunday, again the same sort of time. But we have got with us Gilbert Mondragon. Those that you'll know him, is very, very good figure painter. Certainly someone that I've got to know over many years, and whenever I've got an issue or problem, he's one of the first people I pester the hell out of. We've also got Robert Lane. He's going to be with us. He's a painter as well as a sculptor, so that's amazing. And Rob Herring will be with us as well. Again, a painter and sculptor. So that's going to be a real big challenge the next roundtable. And like I say, watch out. I will put out on the social medias a full list of all the roundtables and dates, because I've got to make sure my guests are available and they're fully aware of if they want to get involved. So
and also put up the links to the other ones as well that have already been done, so people can catch up if they need to. Yeah,
definitely. It's a series on the YouTube channel. So if you just look on the series, it's listed on the front page as a series, so you can just view them all and watch them all.
Lovely.
There you go.
Any final thoughts, John?
No. I was just wondering what my mum was phoning for.
Okay. Any final thoughts, Bill?
Just thanks for having me. Really, really an enjoyable project.
Yeah,
much fun.
I agree. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun one. When will we see some build progress? Final question from Steve.
Right. So build progress will start in earnest, I think, in about 4 weeks' time, 4 to 6 weeks' time.
Ooh, awesome.
That's the plan.
Right, I've got to write up these notes now, and I'll see you again.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for being with us, and I'm sure we will see you very, very soon. And I'm waffling because I'm trying to press the right button to make sure I've got the right thing, and I haven't, because you'd think I'd have this all prepped, wouldn't you? Really, honestly. But anyway, thank you very much, everybody, and we will see you all soon. Take care.
Bye.
Ciao.